Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. For those, I think everybody in this room knows who I am. I'm Peter Girizzo, I'm the superintendent of schools. We are here tonight to start to get the community's input on where we should be going with a potential bond work. So we've done a whole bunch of work already. The board and I have talked about any of the work that we potentially do would be tax neutral. So we're using money, that debt service that's falling off, and where the priorities would land in that potential bond. So I'm not going to get too far ahead of our architects and construction managers. They will talk us through that, but the idea tonight is to get your thoughts and ideas about what you think, and then that will get melded into the thought exchange that we had up and all the ideas that we collected there, the forums that we conducted with faculty and staff. After this, I'll also do some direct community outreach with some of our local groups, and we'll start to really massage this over the course of the next couple of months to get to a scope that works for everybody. And so pending the board's agreement and approval, we would be looking to have a vote in late fall, so November, December area. So that gives us time to get everybody informed. Okay, so with that said, I want to give Sarah Jones, our board president, an opportunity to say hello. And tonight is very informal. We're going to talk with you about what we've done so far, give you some backfill, and then you'll see that there's paper and markers on your tables, so we'll be a little interactive. And hopefully when you leave here, we'll feel more informed and we'll have another one of these in the future. Okay, so thanks so much.
Thank you. So I'm Sarah Jones, and I've been on the school board at this point for a little more than 5 years. And I'm on two committees that are relevant to this, which is the District Health and Safety Committee and the Construction Steering Committee. And I have to say that personally, I found these two committees to be a pretty stressful experience. It is an endless list of things that need to be fixed or repaired, and basically your job is to triage those items and to figure out which tools we have at our disposal to deal with them. And I feel as confident as I feel with the district using all of those tools. How much money do we have in the budget? How do we use reserve funds? How do we put propositions before voters? It's nonetheless still sort of a triage situation. But I think we have two important opportunities. One is the fact that timing-wise, right now, we have an opportunity to do some work through bonds that will be tax neutral. And the second is all of you. With the help of the community, in terms of thinking really carefully through what's important to the community, what's important for our schools, what the community can handle, I think we have the most important tool for being able to deal with the things that our school district needs. So thank you first and foremost for coming out tonight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I don't take anyone's time for granted in coming out and participating and giving us your thoughts and your ideas for what we can do. That being said, I think what's important is that if the community works together, we can do basically what this community has done for 100 years now, which is to invest in these schools and to build the infrastructure that we have here, because we need these schools to exist for another 100 years. And that means figuring out how we're going to maintain what we have, figuring out what has changed really significantly about our district and about how kids learn, and making that plan for the future, figuring out how it is that we're going to do our part in what is a very long chain of community members that have supported this district so successfully and got us to where we are tonight. So thank you for coming, and I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on our infrastructure and our learning needs tonight.
So I did forget to introduce a couple of important people who are here tonight. So Tina Mercedes-Sayas is an architect at CS Arch, and Daryl Mastraki is from mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, also at CS Arch. Bob Furnice is our construction manager from Savin Engineers. And then Olivia Bawazzi is here with us, our assistant superintendent for business. John Hall, our director of facilities. And members of the board who are here as well: Dave Ludmar, Marianne Russo, Rich Galati, Sarah Jones. That's all of you, yes? Okay, very good. Former board member Tony Labate, right? The Nadells. It's a good night. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and off we go.
So
Thank you.
if, maybe you can join one of the tables that. Sure. We want to try to keep this kind of collaborative in nature, so as much as we can group together, I think it would be great. So we're going to review a number of things tonight, including the district vision and goals, and we'll talk through that and get some feedback from you all, and also the process to date. We've been working on this now for.
Yes, otherwise they can't hear you on the tape recording when they put it on the website.
So let me start over. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to review the district's vision and goals. We're also going to talk about the process to date. So we've been working with the district now since the fall. So we've actually done a lot of work to get to where we are. We'll talk about general themes, some of the things were sort of larger picture, big picture items that we're looking at, actually go through some case studies and how we've been able to apply these themes in a practical setting, and then look at the pre-referendum timeline to bring us from where we are today to where we need to be in the fall of 2019. And we'll talk a little bit about next steps as well. So district priorities. We are looking at 4 big items. Infrastructure, I probably should go in order. Safety and security, instructional space, infrastructure, and then we're also looking at an energy performance contract. And we'll talk about what those really are. And as we look at these, we are focused on 4 goals: to keep the project tax neutral, to provide a design and an impact that is bold. We're looking at healthy, safe, and efficient solutions in all areas. And we're looking at the instructional space for it to be contemporary, collaborative, and modern. So a modern learning space for your students.
I guess before we move on beyond this slide, does anyone have any thoughts or comments, especially on the district's priorities or goals for this capital project? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't see anything about cost up there. Is that considered at all in your vision and goal?
Well, cost in the sense that tax neutral, yes.
It is. So everything we're doing. So
Cost in the sense of what it's going to cost.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay. Just wondering if it's been considered.
It will certainly
certainly.
under consideration once the scope is defined.
So regarding the vision for the project, number 1, safety and security. First and foremost, keeping our kids safe and secure is the number 1 priority in schools. Improve the safety and security throughout the architecture, technology, and active security measures. The district has already gone at great lengths to install active technology and security systems throughout all of the district's facilities. So really this capital project will just be enhancing what's already there. Instructional space, review organization, enrollment projections, and utilization of schools, and create contemporary collaborative learning spaces that promote the future of learning. That's where we can start to get into the big, bold, impactful things that are going to, impact students for generations from now. Infrastructure, identify and prioritize short-term infrastructure needs. This district does a great job with maintaining the infrastructure in all the schools. When we say infrastructure, we talk about the actual structure of the buildings, the mechanical and electrical and plumbing systems, the utilities, things like that. A lot of the things behind the walls that people don't typically see. And then an energy performance contract. you may or may not know, but we actually advertised for an energy performance contract last Thursday. What that is, it's a project focused on making the buildings more energy efficient, whereas the energy conservation measures that are implemented actually pay for the cost of the project. So it's of no cost to the taxpayers or the school district, and through an energy performance contract, you can upgrade and modernize a lot of things like lighting, converting fluorescent lighting to LED lighting throughout all of the buildings in the district, lighting controls, ventilation upgrades, make sure you get proper airflow and outdoor air in all the classrooms, things like that, water efficiency. So we're doing that in parallel with this capital project, and so we can really determine, address a lot of the infrastructure needs, the immediate infrastructure needs through an energy performance contract, so we can focus more of the capital project on, the bold, impactful, collaborative learning environments.
So let's just stay on this for a second.
Okay.
So I think what we wanted to do, based on the four items that we have and that we've worked with the district to identify as the main priorities, we wanted to talk to you and to reach out and to see within these four categories, what do you feel are the priorities? So within safety and security, is there something that you feel that really needs to be addressed? Is there something you've seen at another district? Again, the same with instructional space. What are you hearing from students or from the community that might either be lacking here or may need to just be addressed in general? Same with infrastructure. I mean, we're aware of, for example, the locker rooms that need to be renovated at the middle school. And there are certainly items that I think your students would talk about. Yeah.
I think there's a lack of space in the high school, in particular, and probably in the middle school for collaborative learning, for science research space, spaces for students to do out their additional research projects. The science research room is quite small, and there's a lot of students interested in it now. The program has grown.
So if everybody wants to just take a minute and think about it and jot some ideas down, then we can go from table to table as well. So that's actually one item we're looking at that has been addressed, or at least has been brought to our attention already.
I may be wrong, but it's my understanding that the enrollment projections are going down in the future, that they've come down quite a bit. So I'm just curious as to why additional space is needed. I went to school here a long time ago, and I think the enrollment was about double what it is now in the district. And we have plenty of space.
So,
So I'm curious about that.
sure, and we can address that. Enrollment projections they are going down, but not significantly. And we actually haven't determined if more space is needed. What we're looking at is actually reorganization to better utilize space that already exists. We will go through that full process, though, and if we find that there is program that requires additional space, then we will certainly explore that. I think one of the differences also is that when you were when you were in school, the education or delivery of education was a little bit different than it is now. So right now there are spaces that districts are providing that they did not provide, however long ago, even 5 years ago. So spaces like maker spaces, research science spaces that were mentioned, STEAM rooms and STEM rooms. So there are spaces now that do require programs that require more actual physical space.
Along the lines of physical space and instructional space in general, I tend to be a voice of not wanting to lose sight of outdoor learning spaces. I think often reading between the lines, technology is given very high priority, which it must be these days, but
simple answer is yes, yes, right? So we're looking at our programming in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? Science, doing that in a more cohesive way, offering electives for kids in robotics, in gaming design, in web application, we already have some in graphic design. We have a course in architecture, yes. We have a course in the catalog for next year in cybersecurity. I'm not sure it's gonna run or not, depending on student interest, but those are there. So, and then the A in STEAM is for the arts. So then we're incorporating the architecture, the drawing, drawing and all that kind of stuff. So the answer is yes. We definitely want to build that component of our program, because when we look at, it is a relative weakness for North Shore.
And I would suggest if we want to do STEM school, and if you're going to do it right, do it whole hard. Go all in. But before you can answer some of those questions, how much space you need, the community and you have to come to terms
Correct.
with how far do you want to go with it?
That's exactly right. So we want to take, so we have spaces within, particularly the high school, where we might be able to configure them or group them and have, using the wood shop, using the language lab, using, robotics needs a space. We've got this amazingly successful robotics program, and they take over the math lab. And it's got to be set up and broken down every single day, and that's not the way to build a robot. You've got to be able to leave it and come back to it, right? So, they need space to the point that was made earlier. The science research program is in a very, very, very small space, and if we want to build that program and compete at the Regeneron level, we need better resources for the kids who are involved in that program, and part of those resources starts with the space that is allocated to them. So I don't think we'll go like the North Shore STEM high school per se, because we want to have a very balanced, we still will have all of the other things that, fine and performing arts and, humanities and everything else that makes our high school so special, all the languages, but that component of a North Shore education definitely needs to be strengthened.
Has there been any consideration on using the building versus roof? That was originally built for the TV studio?
So, yes, actually there is, right? So, yep, it's a good thought. So we're actually, that space was initially built as a TV studio, right? And what we've come to learn over the course of time is that we don't have students who are hugely interested in television production in the way that I think that was designed to support, right? That doesn't mean they're not interested in video design and development, but they're more interested in doing that work on their tablets, on their phones, on their, on a desktop using, whatever software program they have. And we don't necessarily need a full space dedicated to a very formal television production studio. And so I would rather, where I am right now in my thinking on this is I would rather not spend money on invest money in a space that won't be used for that, right? And so it could be used for something else, right? And then can we take that, those objectives that we have for video design, game development, whatever it might be, video production, and move that into one of the spaces that we build within the high school proper. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I think just to understand the process, as we start to hear these ideas and as we've talked with the principals and some of the other department leaders, we'll start looking at organizational solutions when we have a better handle or grasp on what you're asking, and on all levels of department levels. Anything else?
So, a couple of points. First of all, as it relates to that graphic we showed before, clearly, number 1, 2, 3, can't even begin to explain. But it would be interesting if you took the Victorian, freed up this space in here in the building for something else, and created a library and research center there. And again, without the need for massive amounts of books, you have a virtual, so a lot of technology, flat screens, Wi-Fi. You have something really slick that can be utilized again and again, rather than something that's not utilized whatsoever. So now I'm sure I'll have more ideas later on about it.
Thank you. That was a good suggestion. Anything else on these topics? Visions? Do you agree? Disagree? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with Larry that safety and security is the most important thing. Is there anything that's being done to further that, or is it your feeling that we're in a good place?
No, the number one priority of this project is to further the safety and security at each building in the district. Whether that's video surveillance, access control, doors not being left open, everything's locked during school hours, all of those things. We've actually been combing through all of the buildings and assessing all of the existing systems in each building. And like I said, we're going to enhance those to make sure that the buildings are as safe and secure for the students as possible. Even when you look at, glass, new glass versus window filming, things like that, so you can't view right in the classrooms or cafeterias or things like that from the outside. We're going through all of that at the moment.
Actually, we should,
Okay.
let's move on.
We
because
can
I
keep
just wanna
moving.
answer some of that as we go through this. So part of tonight is to garner feedback from you, to get ideas, to talk through some of that, but it's also to explain to you where we are, what we've done. Again, some of the safety security work that we've done is included in this. And then again, to get more feedback. So we've spent from late September, October to now, on what we would consider our exploratory phase. So this is a combination of us getting to know your district, understanding who you are, getting to know your buildings, and we've gone through a series of visiting sessions, of meetings, of walkthroughs with the buildings. So we've been meeting with district administration and the bond steering committee fairly regularly. We have met with all of the principals at the elementary level, middle school, high school, with all of the directors of all the departments, so K-12 technology, humanities, your STEM and STEAM programs, along with the arts department, so fine and performing arts. We've met with your athletic director and then with your student support services, so the guidance and counselors. We've also gone through a sort of an assessment phase as well, or an investigative phase, which was focused on a number of site visits and walkthroughs. So we did have a security consultant on site who walked through all the buildings with the head custodials and in some cases the principal. Our architectural team has been on site several times at this point. Again, we did a walkthrough with your building principals, and we've been back just on our own, again, getting a better handle on the existing conditions and some of the items that were in the past building conditions survey that are still kind of on the list of priority items. We reviewed the building conditions survey and the 5-year plan with your administrative team to kind of look at priorities, what really needs to be done versus what we can put off, and try to balance all of the scope. And again, have walked the buildings again. And then we did have a meeting about the energy performance contract that Daryl mentioned. So we have some general themes that kind of focus on the 4 priority items. So as we talk about safety and security, what we look at are these are a number of the items that we look at. First and foremost, we look at entrance identity. So an entrance that's identifiable, you know where it is, you're not searching for it, so you don't have people kind of circling your campus to find it. A secure, safe entrance vestibule, and we'll kind of go through what that really looks like. Limiting access points and zoning, so looking at ways to organize your building so that the public, when they come in for an event, they're limited to a certain area of the school. Then we look at, we also look at visual connectivity and clear paths, so making sure that when you're looking through down a hallway, you can see as far as we possibly can get, and avoiding little alcoves where people can hide, or where it might support behavior that you don't want happening. And then we look at more sort of the detail, like door hardware, keying, access control, all those items that play into security, including intrusion detection and surveillance. Daryl mentioned glass protection. We look at windows that are lower to the ground, and whether they should require a film on them versus a replacement. And then exterior lighting in general, to make sure the campus is lit well at all times, while not disturbing your neighbors. So this is an example of some of these items and how they relate to just a few of your schools. So at the high school, you can see the high school has multiple access points that are open quite a bit, and no entrance vestibule essentially at all. So somebody is sitting in the lobby and they buzz you in, and once you're in, you're in. The middle school really has no identifiable entrance. It's the complete opposite. And it's actually set deep into the site. And the main office is actually far removed from the main entrance. And then Seacliff there's a few examples with Seacliff as well, where there's no entrance vestibule, and there are a number of accessible ground floor windows. So these are the type of items we're looking at across all the schools, along with the list that we just saw. So to just give you an example of how a secure entrance vestibule works, and there are a number of ways to address this. This is a school that we worked on that had a very similar, actually a very similar entrance. It had a colonnade that came out to the parking lot, so when a bus dropped off, the students could walk under a canopy and be at least protected by rain and snow. And you walked right into the school. So we actually took that long canopy off, and we created a secure entrance vestibule. And I don't know if is there a pointer? There you go. So that red arrow shows you that actually is all new construction, that one piece. Yep. And what it does is, you can see we attached it to the main office, and we put in a security office. So the visitors actually come into their own visitor vestibule, which they're buzzed into, and then they speak to somebody at the window, and that person either lets them in or they wait in the vestibule. So this is one approach. There are several ways to address it, but I wanted to just give you an example of the condition that the high school works under right now versus what we consider a very high-level, safe and secure vestibule. And these are some applications in other schools. So again, you can see the one on the left, the blue one, that door actually has a wall to the side of it. So when you walk into that vestibule, you're separated from the main vestibule. And again, you're talking to somebody in a window, they let you through or they don't let you through. And again, this is a similar one where this is one main vestibule, but again, there's a window right to the left as you walk in the main doors. I think we mostly covered the...
Yeah, so the idea behind this is really to separate student entrance from visitor entrances. You don't want your visitors to enter the building directly without checking in with a security officer first, and being run through the district security system to to make sure they're okay before they enter the building.
And I think it's important to note that on all of these instances, though we're able to manage a secure setting, the entrance is still very welcoming. It fits into the nature of the buildings. And so it doesn't give the impression that you're not a community school. I mean, your community is still welcome. It's just your main concern is your students and protecting them. At which school? At these schools, they actually come in this main end.
Yep.
Yep.
So these doors right here.
To the left.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in this scenario, this red path is the visitor entrance. These sets of double doors is the student entrance. So you have everything in the same location, but there's an identifiable visitor entrance for them to check in with the security officer. so they can be sort of contained within a space before they're allowed into the building.
And once your arrival ends, so let's say that's 8 a.m., those main student doors are locked, and the only door to enter is the actual visitor entrance vestibule.
Are the students also vetted with security cards or something? Because, I mean, think out of the box, somebody can sneak in with the students if they want.
They can be, and that's a decision the district, would make. Yeah.
See, there are some districts that have every student that comes to the building, so, right, so as they go through that program, they're starting to get, what actually we does here, we don't see that, we have the technology to do it.
So I talked about this briefly earlier. Does anyone have any questions on the energy performance contract, what it is, how we're accomplishing it, what we think we can get out of it? I mean, really, it's a lot of the infrastructure systems that we know by making them more energy efficient, we can save a lot of money for the district. So solar is a consideration. We've talked about it at bond steering committee meetings. We've talked about it with the district. There are opportunities for solar at various buildings throughout the district. We just yet haven't identified where and how much solar, and what the payback would be for those systems. But renewable energy in general is on the table for an energy performance contract. So what we did is we wrote a request for proposals, and we put it out to the public last Thursday. It's across as we've seen in the last couple days, it has reached pretty much all of New York State, all of the contractors and the companies that do this type of work. And in fact, even in the last couple days, I've personally got some emails, and I know John and Matthew have. Are you guys, is the district open to solar? Are they open to renewable energy? Whether it's roof or ground or parking canopies, whatever it may be. And the answer is always yes. We're open to, basically we're looking for proposals for companies to come in and tell us what they think this, how much can they package in this energy performance contract, and how can they maximize the value of it. So, and that's the purpose of the request for proposal stage, are really to get proposals from all these companies to find out what each company can actually offer to the district and the community.
The other reason I ask is because what's going to happen in the next 10 years, we all know, is more electric vehicles.
Yep. Yep.
So that's another
Mm-hmm.
So would you put green roofs in the same category? Because I hear you say roof. So I'm just curious if that's on the table.
So-
Roofs are tough with a renovation.
Yeah, green roof really isn't an energy conservation measure. It's something that would be more in the capital project, because you're creating an outdoor educational space or an outdoor space. Unless you use the green roof to harvest and retain and reuse rainwater, which is an option, but it's still something we're considering, but it's a significant expense to come up with that, to develop basically a new rainwater harvesting system in the district.
Don't they also tend to reduce air conditioning needs?
They do. So they reduce what's called urban heat island effect. It basically provides a cooler roof, but they do require some sort of maintenance. Even if you put vegetation up there that supposedly doesn't require any maintenance, they still do.
Yeah, I think the other factor on that is that's practical if it's within budget for new construction, not as practical for an existing building because of the structural system that's needed to support.
the drainage, the things
Yeah.
that go into it, but it is something the district is considering.
I'm just,
Yeah,
there could be crossover to instructional spaces.
sure.
Just one question, especially in this category, I would expect that we have a return on investment for each line item, anticipated return on investment.
Yes.
So we can then measure the investment versus, what we're doing and what the payback is.
Mhm. So with each proposal we'll receive, to get into the weeds a little bit, the state education department requires every energy performance contract at a public school in New York State to be paid back within 18 years. So the cost of the project has to be paid back through the energy savings within 18 years. not accounting for state aid that the district may get or anything like that. It's called a simple payback, has to pay itself back. But within each proposal we'll receive, the proposers, the companies that propose on the energy performance contract actually have to provide a cash flow model. So with every energy conservation measure, year by year, what the cash flow is, and if their proposal generates positive cash flow back to the district on top of paying back the energy performance contract. Ideally, I mean, it's the district's ultimate goal is to generate positive cash flow to then reinvest in other things.
I'm actually suggesting it in a constructive way. One example is some of us here are working on the water project, and at some point we'll have to finance that. But to me, the financing of the water project is not a cost.
Mhm.
It's actually a savings. And if you can show that you're spending money, but you're going to get a big payback on it on a recurring basis
Yep.
or in perpetuity, that's important because it actually reduces, even though you're asking for X, you're actually getting back, some of that X. And you want to kind of, from a marketing perspective, take it away from the total number and make the number perhaps more appealing. That's all.
Okay.
That's exactly how it works.
Yep.
Sorry?
That's exactly how it works.
Perfect.
Yeah. Or
I have confidence in-
sounds like you should propose on this. Any other questions on this? So what this shows in general is that the district is being really proactive in making their buildings and facilities as energy efficient as possible, so that extra dollars and money and time and energy can be focused on the students and the learning environments.
So this is just an example of one of the ways we are looking at the overall scope of work for all the buildings. What we're, and that's coming from a combination of the discussions we had with principals, the administrative team that we're working with, the past building condition survey, the 5-year plan. So it's a number, and walking through the buildings ourselves. So what we've done is we're dividing the scope into these 4 categories: the safety and security, instructional infrastructure, and EPC, and looking at all the items that we have thus far and where they fall, to see where the district is focusing ultimately their money. So this is just an example, and we're doing this across all the schools, and this is really a live document that we continue to update as we learn more about the scope. Ultimately, it'll be packaged up once we get a better handle on all of it. So we want to get into instructional space now and talk a little bit about what we've learned from the principals and from the students and from the administrative team. So we're looking at 21st century design that is focused on 4 critical items, which is a collaborative, flexible space to support how students are learning actively now. Space that allows for creativity, for exploration, but it's also inspirational, so that students want to be in there, they want to learn, they want to discover. At space that supports communication across multiple media. So looking at digital aspects of the classrooms, looking at multiple writing walls, looking at being able to project from your own surface or from your own device and sharing screens. And then space that promotes critical thinking and problem solving. So those are, the 4, what we call the 4 C's of 21st century learning that are important for today's generation and I think future generations. That's also aligned with creating space that is clean and uncluttered, creating an environment that's not distractive, using color appropriately, using color to promote certain moods or certain feelings, creating healthy space, so proper lighting, natural day lighting, as well as proper artificial lighting, the proper climate control, views to daylight. All of these things are really important in all learning, but especially as we start to redevelop space. So we wanted to just talk and show some examples of how this work is sort of translated. At the elementary level, you can see this is a typical classroom. And I think what this is translating is the idea of a classroom that is clean, it's organized, it's uncluttered, You can see that there are areas that are focused on certain types of learning. So there's center space for the small kids to kind of gather and read a book. There are typical, well, not very typical desks, but what they allow for is reorganization, learning in groups or learning individually, even at a very young age. And you can see that the teacher's desk is actually mobile. So she can move her location to the center of the room, to the corner of the room. So again, providing a space that really allows for flexibility. Thoughtful color, you know, abundant daylight, natural views. And this is another example at the elementary level. So these are the types of spaces that are not, they're sort of undefinable spaces. They're casual learning spaces, spaces that allow for learning and kind of living. You know, giving kids the time to kind of just downtime to relax and to read a book, or to work together in a small group outside of the classroom. This is an example of a STEM lab. So this is actually a project we're working on right now. You know, a space for elementary school kids that promotes building and making. You know, looking at, again, an area where there's whiteboards and smart boards, where there's write-on walls that kids can just group together and learn. Areas where a child can learn individually or learn as a group, and providing the equipment to allow them to do that. In this case, you can see the electrical reels, even at this level, again, allowing for a lot of flexibility within the classroom. And an elementary media center. So turning your libraries into more forward-thinking learning media centers. Again, creating the different types of spaces for all of your students to work. So you can see in the background of this, in the far back, there are stacks. They're tall stacks that are up against the wall, but they're limited. And then in the sort of middle of the space that are towards the windows, you can see there's an area for computer stations for learning as a group or, again, individually. Then you can see there are smaller group tables. And then creating a space up at the front of this image that, again, allows students to kind of do their thing at that age. They can relax, but they're learning at the same time. And this is an example of a media center that's at the high school, middle school level. So age-appropriate materials, age-appropriate colors. You can see that in the back, again, there are fixed stacks, traditional stacks, but up at the foreground, all the stacks that are lower are all mobile. So again, allowing for this space to really be able to rearrange itself. And creating different types of spaces. So in this case, one of the goals in this media center was, from the superintendent, was that he wanted it to be a combination, a place that kind of resembled a Starbucks, but was still instructional and educational. And what we have found in this space is that the students, this is where they hang out. Between classes, this is where they are.
They can get lattes?
They can't get lattes yet, but I think they're actually looking at that now.
They're asking.
They are.
That's for sure. That's just another view of the same media center.
Yeah, and what you can see so this is a view looking the other direction, but what you see is that sort of central lower ceiling is actually the help desk. So that's where students bring their computers and work together to solve a problem. So this is an example of another, a different type of space that promotes a number of different activities. So this is a space that has multifunction. It can be used as lecture. It can be used for classroom space. But it also allows for students to kind of to hang out, to have some time on their own, or to hang out as a group for, again, individual learning, for group learning, and really functions for across multiple areas.
Any questions, comments, feedback?
Is this what you're looking, type of thing
Those spaces, those are the types of spaces we are looking at to try to incorporate as much as we can. I mean, the stepped tiered space, I don't see us doing that in every school, but there might be an opportunity to do that in the middle school level or the high school level.
My first thought is there absolutely works. Absolutely works. And those are pictures of actual spaces that you actually have.
It's mixed. Some are precedents that are just great types
Some
of
are
spaces, and
artist
some are art, the renderings are our renderings, and then some are actually build projects that we've done as well.
The only thing, and to Larry's point back there, is that the cost of something like that, that to retrofit and refurb like that, there is also an intense amount of cost that the school district is trying to meet right now. And you've laid out a lot of priorities. My suggestion, and I'm sure I'm not alone, that if you're going to do something, safety and security comes first and foremost, obviously.
Yep.
And this piece of it, which is the one, comes at the end. And maybe even later. I don't need to throw a monkey wrench in the works, but that's the reality of it. It's a huge cost to do something.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we've looked at, so for example, in our, we don't have a dollar amount assigned to the safety and security work yet because we still haven't, sort of, more or less. We know that in order to, do you want me to hold that? In order to, thank you. In order to deal with, that's probably better, right? In order to deal with the vestibules, right, that's new, in some cases, that's new construction, not in all cases, but in some. So that becomes a high priority. When we talk about the infrastructure work, right? Nope, that's instructional space. So infrastructure, boilers, roofs, foundation work.
Before it falls apart.
Correct, right? So we have actually done a 5-year buildings conditions study. That's been done by by 7 engineers. That gets done every 5 years. There are 55 to $56 million worth of projects just in infrastructure. So that's not to say that within 5 years, there's an expectation that we're going to spend that kind of money, right? But those are, so if you think about what you need to do at your own home, right?
But you triage it appropriately.
Well, we're doing a little more than triaging, but within the scope of the general budget that we put forward to the community every year, there's, I believe, $800,000 for infrastructure work that we do across all our facilities. And we have, I just calculated this and I'm forgetting, it's probably $250,000 square feet of space across the whole district, right? That supports that. All those other projects, some they're all priority ranked, and we've gone through all those from priority 1 all the way through priority 5. And so this project will look at the priority 1 items, right? What we do here. The safety and security work will look at all those priority 1 items. When we take a look at the instructional space component of whatever we're going to do here, you're absolutely right that some of this is going to become not affordable in what we do, but where we are in this moment is that we don't want to limit the thinking of what could be, right? So we will then look at the instructional needs of the district, of each of the schools, and say, all right, these are priority 1 items, these are priority 2 items, these are priority 3 items, these we can handle through our capital reserve fund, these are projects that we could handle through the general budget. But in this, as we start to build the scope of this project out, we don't want to limit what the needs are, and then we'll deal with the affordability sometime later, right?
Maybe just to be even more focused.
Yes.
And maybe I don't understand, but is the priority to improve the quality of instruction, the quality of the environment of instruction? Because I would contend, and maybe we'll have this offline, that the quality of instruction is the priority. The quality of the environment, in my opinion, is not as important. It's not as, and I can give you statistics
Yeah.
that would back that up.
I would say they're sure, we can talk about this, but I would say that they are interrelated. And so we want to make sure the spaces that our students learn in are, comfortable, conducive to learning, well-lit, with fresh air, comfortable furniture, right? So some of what you are seeing here is certainly aspirational, right? But keep in mind that we always have through our yearly work, our annual work, we are replacing furniture, right? We have desks and chairs, they have a lifespan, we put them on a replacement cycle. We certainly can't replace all of our desks and chairs at one moment. And so as we make those transitions, we might be transitioning to different kinds of classroom seating and design, right? So there's no possible way we could accomplish, so that first elementary classroom you saw, right? It's unlikely that we'd be able to accomplish that environment across all 3 schools at one time. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But some of it depends too, like what you're doing, right? So when we went up to Bronxville to look at some of the newer spaces, if you're not talking about knocking down walls and changing windows, if you're really talking about painting furniture, it's not that expensive. What becomes expensive is when you're actually changing the physical structure or the technology, like those projectors were a big ticket item when we went to see it. But to do the furniture and the paint, well, that's something that could possibly work into the budget within reason. It's where you look at that middle school space where you have that area, that would be, I would say, aspirational, this one, because now you're talking about new construction, right? You're adding space, and that's expensive. So people just have to, I guess the community has to weigh in. Are they willing to do that? Or do they just really want to, enhance what we have in a more affordable?
Also, I think as we start to look at the program, to look at the numbers, to look at the utilization, and to look at some of the spaces that are a requirement, for example, the secure vestibules. If there's an opportunity to build off of something that we know we have to do, we'll try to take that opportunity. And again, looking at programs that require different type of space. So if there's not enough room in a typical classroom to turn it into a maker space, then it means taking space from something else, which then means either constructing new space or revamping another space. So we have to really get into that whole reorganizational piece still. And right now, we've been focused on understanding the needs and understanding the program.
To your point, it is looking like that there are places where we have significant enough security issues that we're going to have to make some significant investments. And the advantage of having the architects is that they can see where, if you have to make the investment in the security changes, that you can get some educational advantages.
Benefits from it.
And so that's where we're really looking to build upon what we need to do to get us to where a lot of the community would like to go. We're leveraging the security investment into a concept that I personally couldn't come up with, but we're very fortunate that there are people that can do that.
And in addition to the security point, you had some security consultants. Has anyone reached out? I mean, I'm sure you have to some extent, but have you reached out as regards to this project to the police department and asked for their opinion? What they think?
We've had
So last year when we went through all these audits, we had the external audit done. We had the audits done by Homeland Security through Nassau County Police, and then that information got folded into one place. And then this year, we had another group come as a component of the study of this work, right, to look at how those 2 studies, plus their very deep dive comprehensive study that looked at not just the physical spaces of the buildings, but also the technological infrastructure, the videos, the wiring, the camera, the cards, all of that. That's all coming together into one central location, so we have information that is multidimensional. okay? One point on just part of what happens when you do a capital project is you're eligible for aid from the state. Now, because we are a pretty well-resourced place, our aid ratio is not particularly high. But whenever you do new construction and you tie an instructional space to your new construction, right, your aid ratio goes up. And if you tie, and it goes up even higher if you tie a space designed to meet the needs of kids with special needs. It goes up even higher. So that's something that we're also looking at. So to the extent that we have these needs, to the extent that we have, one of the needs that we know we have is smaller spaces to support students. So for example, at Glenwood Landing, we have 5 support teachers sharing one space, right? That's not, we make it work, and it works well, but it's not ideal. So if we had opportunities to have smaller spaces so kids can have OT and PT and speech and resource room wherever they need to have them at different points during the day or simultaneously, then that's a better option.
The benefit of that is that then they're not occupying a full classroom for that.
Right.
Which
Right.
takes
Some of the pluses with the design on the upside, the fact that you have all this movable furniture, flexible versatility, and even to Peter's point, if, for example, special ed gives you a higher determinant of the aid, you could call classes class/special ed, and because you have that flexibility, you can make that happen.
Yeah.
One of the issues I'm going to underscore in the process is the fact that in the public sector, you very seldom zero-base the budget or zero-base the bond. You look at what's expiring, you look at the cash flow, you look at the amount of the asset liability. And one of the things I would like to see this year is almost like a menu, right? So you've identified ideally what change you'd like to see directionally aligned with the school strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You come up with a lot of, book of work. And then what you do is you prioritize it, you create these tranches, these buckets of work, and then you lay it out there. And then I think it always goes back to, you want to make it revenue neutral, cash flow neutral. So you look at the current bond that's expiring, you look at that as a potential spend, and then you look at the cash flow, interest rates change, coming off of higher interest rates, you may have some savings there. But ultimately, what I'd love to see is, I don't know how to say this articulately, but some kind of give back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Not just an advancement to the schools, but also some kind of a reduction in some way, shape, or form. Show the community that there's an understanding of all the external situations and concerns that exist. So you can actually have 3 elements to it. This is the advancement, this is the cost, and this is kind of like the give back.
So we have, there are 3, we have 3 sets of debt that are retiring within the next, I think it's 25, 26 is the last, right? I think there's 3 sets, it's 23, 24? 25, 26, I thought, right? So the third one goes off by 2025, 26. So the idea with this is exactly what you're proposing. So we've asked our bond advisors to take a look at, because they fall off in close succession to one another, right? And any potential borrowing would be done in multiple phases, right? So what we've done is we've layered that to see what that looks like, and then what the tax impact of the implementation of that is. We haven't made any determinations about final scope, so it's hard to say where this will ultimately land. But the idea, my vision for what comes into the future is that we do exactly what you're describing. We take all of this information that we've collected from everybody. We take a look at what is our borrowing capacity. We do not want to be, we want this to be tax neutral. And then we have our bond advisory committee help us do exactly what you're describing.
Along those lines, is there thought given to reducing the amount of money the budget is at?
Yeah, perhaps.
And I think that should be a goal. I think that's what Larry's saying. That should be a goal. That should be to give back to the community. Because the budget's only gone up percentages, several percentages every year.
Right.
Again,
Yep, I know, I hear you.
that should be a goal.
The role, so at the last, separate from this, but just as a point of information, right? And we can talk, I'm happy to meet with you, talk with you, probably, I mean, this is not the time for it, but if we just took the current staffing model where we are, right? So we have all of our program, all of our staffing in place, and we just rolled it over from one year to the next without adding anything, just carry it over. The value of that is a 2.8 increase to the budget. And that's roughly 80% of our operating budget. So that what you're asking for, I hear you, right? What you're asking for is a little different from this because the way the operating budget funds this is through the debt service line. So there's a certain amount of monies that we budget for every year to pay our principal and interest payments. So that there could potentially be a reduction there, but to reduce the overall budget is a tall mountain to climb. Yes.
I'd also like to say this, John, so Larry's point about the give back to the community, improving the schools is for the community and is for a good portion of the students, but also all of us who are homeowners and in the community and have desirable property. So I see this as an improvement for all of us, not just certainly not for the administration and the students, but for the administration and the teachers, but for our students and for our community members who use the schools and who participate in our schools, either through their children or through some other.
So yeah, I completely agree with you, and my role here is not to criticize, it's to build a bridge, because I do believe that there's some
Concern.
concern, that's not what I'm looking for. There's a break. There's a break in terms of communication, in terms of process, in terms of logistics. I think if we do a better job, like for example, don't just look at the bottom of the expense, and pay back to get profit. Don't just look at the fact that it's revenue neutral, show a small piece, maybe because of interest rate shift, and maybe because of the way you lag with that. The way creatively do it, we could actually reduce, as Peter mentioned, it's a line item in terms of debt servicing. We can actually reduce that without compromising anything. There are ways creatively, from a finance point of view, that you can actually get stuff done, but still make the community feel. I think what's important isn't what we do, it's how we communicate. And to me, I think there's a huge opportunity cost in the past, and a huge opportunity today in the future. We can just craft the message different, and we are, I think it's so important, I can't underscore this. Remember, all of this has to be voted on, right? And our job is to put something that's good for the school, but that's what we can. And I just feel like with the current environment, again, I'm a big supporter, big proponent, but with the current environment, I just sense that there's a little bit more resistance. And I'm just suggesting that whatever we can do to get rid of some of those headwinds, I think would be very smart.
I agree with you that the message is always the important thing, but I do think that the community also has to understand that for years we have brought down the percentage of increases in the budget. There were years where there was 11 and 12% increases, and that has been brought down tremendously.
That's why there's a 2% gap, and a lot of that was due to the TRS. In 2008, the taxes went up 9%, 8 point something, almost 9%, because after 2008 and the stock market crashed, we had a huge number of the TRS. We've been fortunate up until this year that most pension funds that I sit on and that I watch have had a 12% return, 16% return. This year on September, month December, all the positives came back. Almost every pension fund ended on a negative. That is not reflected until the following year when they do the actuarial evaluation, which is a year behind. So your assessment from New York State as to what we're going to need to put in for the actuarial evaluation is not going to be felt in this year's budget. You're not going to get it in this TRS assessment or ERS assessment, but you will get it next year in that TRS and that ERS assessment. And we won't know what that is for really almost another year from now, right? And health insurance, that's been going up every year. So those are gonna be huge numbers, and part of that falls outside of the 2% cap as it's calculated, because as we all know, it's not a flat 2%. And also tied into that is inflation, right? So if inflation is going up, which it is now, that's going to go into the calculation of the 2%. So you could very easily be up over the percentage budget numbers that you've had before, because part of it is going to fall outside of the cap. So our allowable increase this year was 2.7%. Other years, we were at 1.8%. So it all depends on how it's calculated and the outside factors.
Right. So I would,
I was going to say to Marion's point, right after they instituted the cap, we had crazy health insurance and pension cost increases because we were still carrying over from.
Right, and part of that fell outside of the cap.
yes.
So that you could be under the cap, but still have a significant increase through forces that are not controlled by the school
And we had to
district.
cut other areas of the budget
Yeah.
Right.
to be able to meet that, to be only at the cap.
In the next 5 years, the budget is going to be far greater than a 2% add each year, because of what Marion was talking about, because the stock market is very visible, because interest rates coming up. So there's going to be a big shift in a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm just saying, I think I'm just making the suggestion that I think it would be a good investment in the community if we just exercise some discretion and better communication, because I think it's an investment in the people in the community. We want them at the end of the day to vote yes, right? So we should remove as many of the headwinds as possible. And I don't think there's a big task in terms of changing what's on the screen. I just think it's in terms of presentation, maybe some creativity around the finances.
Yeah, so if I can just, and then maybe give it back to you, right? We want to be very, very clear, the board and I, that we are not looking to engineer a number, right? And that is where we are at this point in time. It's not about trying to get to a specific place or not, or exceed, like there's no magic number right now. What we are looking to do is really through this process, figure out what are our needs, both, immediate, medium, and long-term. How do we then assign rank priority to those identified needs, and then scope that? And then, so when we talk about safety and security as the sort of the primary driver, right? Some of what we're looking to accomplish hits multiple areas, right? So then we start to cross-hatch those things, right? We'll then go through a pass. We'll probably have a number that's too big, right? We'll then have to look at it again. It's the same way you would look at if you were scoping a project for your home, right? If you were going to redo your kitchen, you'd probably come out of the kitchen place very excited about what you saw, what you had in your mind, and then you get home and you'd say, yowzer, right? And you'd have to figure out what to do next, right?
Here, it goes even deeper than that, because maybe, to Larry's point, and this is a suggestion.
Yes.
Push off everything but the security, but where the security overlaps some other infrastructure needs. In other words, I always learned, if you're opening up the wall of the bathroom, fix something. Change all the pipes that are inside, because you don't want to go back in there. It's expensive.
Perhaps, right.
So you look at it with that kind of an eye, don't spend as
Right.
much right now, because what's coming down the pipe, to Mary Ann's point, is going to be insane. And maybe money, I'm happy to help with that.
Very good.
Because there are ways to do it without cutting any heads.
I hear you. All right. So, make sense? Yes? Okay. Carry on.
Okay, so one of the other things we wanted to talk about, and again, this is the phase where we are trying to figure out the needs and trying to identify them and then prioritize them. One of the things that's also important in 21st century design, current design at the secondary level, is order and organization of a school. So providing an organization that allows for math and science to work together, or for art and digital media and technology to work together. And then and also creating cross-disciplinary instructional learning that helps unify everybody. So this is an example of a school that actually has a very similar layout to the high school, and what I just want to point out is, so this was their entrance, and this is actually the school that I showed the new entrance to that had the secure vestibule. So this was their sort of, their canopy. And their administration was here. They had a big gym in the middle. And what these colors represent are different learning communities. So their STEM, their science and technology, math classrooms are all in green, humanities classrooms were all in purple, and so on. And what you can see is that they're just sort of dispersed. There's no organization. They're kind of all over the place, which makes it very difficult for teachers to collaborate, for students to collaborate, and again, for interdisciplinary learning. So what we looked at, and in terms of organization, was creating these sort of hubs. So looking at the STEM and science hub, and you can see how that works all in green. Creating a humanities kind of wing, and then in these areas focus on the areas where we did some major reorganization. And this particular area here was actually their media center, and we converted that into what we called an innovation hub. And that was to bring all these disciplines together. So it allowed for art students to work on computers next to a science student who might be working on a problem solving a problem on the computer. It allowed for somebody to be working on a lecture next to somebody else who's working on something else. And it also tied into a lot of their technology labs for like Project Lead the Way and sort of high clean technology. And then this was the fine and performing arts, and we rearranged a lot of this to create better music, chorus rooms, band rooms. And I'm going to just show you some examples of that. But what we did here is we only constructed one space, one and a half, I'll say. We moved their gym, which was their first gym in this school. We took this piece out because it was taking up the center core of the building, which is where we wanted students to be focused. And we moved it to the back of the building, which now created a better athletic department, and turned this into their new library media center with a small community room off of it. And this is now the heart of the school. This is the main hub that students walk through. It functions as a gallery for their art department. It functions for pre and post events for the auditorium, for the gym, and you can see the building is zoned where there are doors here and here to kind of block off the classrooms where they can have this part of the school open at night. So there are a number of things that we were able to accomplish with this that really supported the district's ideas, and some of them there are some similarities in terms of creating interdepartmental areas that allow for cross-disciplinary work as well.
Are there any statistics that show students perform better in the new environment than the older environment? Looks nice and it's more organized.
No, I mean, so part of this is we've completed phase one of this, and we have examples of students working in the space. I think that those for this particular school, you won't see the real results, for a few years out, as it takes time to kind of to measure that. But I'll go through this.
I think we're other examples
Sure.
where this type of thing.
Yes.
programs could be
There are plenty of studies that show that.
It shows students perform better?
That shows Academic improvements in terms of organizational standards? Yes.
What about the students that don't function well in that kind of environment? What happens to them?
I guess, explain, what do you mean by that?
Everyone there, I mean, there's plenty of kids, whatever term you want to use, that work very well independently, not in groups, don't want so much stimuli like this.
Yeah, so let me go through, because there are plenty of spaces that support that student as well. So the idea is to focus on all students. It's not the one student who learns, it's not to focus on the student who learns only one way. It's to focus on all the students who require different ways of learning. So this I'll go through quickly, but this just shows you the type of organization that supports. This is the media center that's off of this whole area here. It's off of the main entrance, and it's off of a community space that functions both for community meetings, but also for lecture space during the day. And you can see that's the area we created. We created this here where we moved the gym. And again, that's the sort of blow-up floor plan where you can sort of understand the organization. More importantly, I think this is the space that maybe speaks to what you're asking. So this is a way that we took a wing of the school and renovated their classrooms, but also took, in this case, we took a number of classrooms and divided them in a way that allowed for these small spaces to be inserted. So these are the types of spaces that are sort of like resource rooms or breakout rooms, and they allow for a student, one student, two students, a group of students to work independently, but also to maintain where they're still visible to the teacher, and there's ability for disciplinary, if there's disciplinary issues, that a teacher can still see them. So they can get out, move out of the classroom and work there independently. And so the point of the furniture in these rooms is that it allows a teacher to set up the room for traditional lecture. It allows a teacher to set it up for project-based learning or individual learning. So there's that's the sort of benefit. And a lot of times what we've done is during the pre-referendum phase, we have actually outfitted, we've done a test where we've set up 3 classrooms 3 different ways and allowed the teachers to actually model and use them, so that when the project actually comes along, they've actually already begun to understand what's best suited for the particular school. And this is just an example of, this is the area that I mentioned that where this used to be the library. This was their traditional library, and it was sort of offset, not very central to the school. We turned it into their innovation hub, where it made the connection both back to the math and science rooms, but also to the humanities rooms. And you can see this is a space that's focused on, small lecture, production, group reading, as well as project-based learning and digital media, and a lot of project-based spaces. And then these are some of the examples of what these spaces look like. So this is a maker space as a secondary level, allowing for students to work together in a setting that works for them, that also provides the flexibility that they need to build robots and to be able to leave them there. So you can see that there are areas where they can put them away, bring them back out, and not disrupt the instruction or the learning. So this is actually an example of the case study that I just showed you, one of the new classrooms being used. So what you can see is that, again, the furniture that is selected here allows for students to work in groups and to be pulled and pushed together. There's multitude of walls. There's writing walls where students can kind of break out and work on their own. And then there's a great amount of visibility between classrooms, so that a student who's walking through might be interested or engaged in a class that might be taught someplace else. And then this is balanced with security. So we also need to make sure we have enough space that if there is an event, that students can go into a group and muster in one location and not be seen from the corridor. That's an example of just looking down the hall, and this is an existing corridor, so we were able to remove some of the wall, insert a glass wall, and just really change the environment altogether. And this is actually their art studio. So they went from a very traditional classroom setting for art to a studio-based setting. We exposed the ceilings, we brought in more natural daylight, And what you can see here is the connection to different studios. So now these art teachers are working more collaboratively together, as are the students. So that's where we are. And this is the timeline that we're working under. So we are looking at a public referendum in November of 2019, which means we have a lot of work to do. But we feel pretty good about where we are and starting to develop the educational framework. And that's kind of what we're working through right now. So I would say we're at item 4 right now, looking at really developing the program along with all of the building condition survey items that are focused on the infrastructure and safety and security. So what we hear, and because we've done it, and the students, and there are a number of schools have experienced it. So firstly, that particular classroom, the intent was for it to be more open, so that more students could see what was going on. In the typical classroom, we try to balance that out. But what we hear is that students are distracted for like the first couple days, and then they're over it. That's from the students. We're actually our office.
Adults are a different story.
Yeah.
So in our own offices, we've gone into a similar environment, and there's some people that love it, and there's some people that can just not focus in an open office environment. We found that you actually have to balance that a lot more with adults than you do younger children.
I'm also concerned from a safety point of view.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's something we absolutely study. I mean, we actually do we do a study at the classroom to look at what the angle is and what that maximum angle can be.
Well, it's also important to note that glass is very expensive. So if we're trying to be fiscally responsible with this project, we're showing ideas of precedence, but we're not saying that we're going to put glass walls in everywhere because it costs a lot of money, and the community's concerned with it, and there's a budget we have to adhere to. It's more like, if you're trying to showcase a STEAM room or robotics, get robotics out of the math lab, create a true robotics lab. The district's proud of it. That's what you want to showcase. You don't want to put glass in for a typical classroom, and especially in a lecture setting, and now everyone's looking that way instead of the teacher.
Right. Or just have the teachers put posters up anyway and cover it, which is, we found that happens.
So I think what I want everybody to leave here tonight knowing is that we haven't done really any design work at all, right? So we're really at this very big picture. What are the instructional needs? What are the safety security needs? What are the infrastructure needs? Once we come to some consensus on here's what we think we need to move forward with, they then go and engage in design process, work with us, work with the community, and we start to narrow down into a place that. So there's the 3 together, right? So we've had is 38 or 39 million. We haven't decided yet. Yeah, like I said, you missed before.
Yes, I did.
No, I'm not calling you out, I'm sorry. But no. No, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry, Rob. No, oh my God, I'm sorry. What I had said was that we're not looking to engineer to anything, right? So we're really looking to be, oh, you did, okay. So then you weren't late. All right, thanks. Anything else before we wrap things up here? Yeah. Tell me about it, yes. Yep. So we need to, for the next one, we're gonna, we need to advertise more on this. And we're hoping to, fill a room and get some ideas. Yes.
Even just to say, I found out about this by accident.
Me too.
And quite frankly, as a business person, I'm investing in your business. And
No,
right
I-
there,
I-
like $8,000 a year.
Nope,
And I don't even get an invite.
Well, here's what I want you to do. For those of you who don't have, and this is for anybody who might be watching this at some point, if you do not have kids in our schools and you are not on our email list, right? We communicate a lot via email. Please go to our website and subscribe. You just have to click on the email subscription tab right on our homepage and subscribe to our emails. Now, you're going to get more emails from us than you probably want to have, but you'll get everything, and you won't have to feel like you need to go to the website to get it. I had a conversation with Larry just yesterday about how we can get those of you who don't have kids in our schools more engaged without having to do flyers and mailers and all that stuff, because that's pretty
Quite
costly.
frankly, there should be a mailing list just for the other half of us who are
Yep,
without kids in the school.
yep.
Who, but and I don't want to get every email, so no, I don't want to go to the website and sign up. I'm putting that monkey on your back.
Steve, I can't solve it for you then. I don't know how to solve it for you. If you don't sign up, I hear your frustration. I don't know how to solve the issue of getting you information via email if you don't sign up to get the email subscription. I don't have a solution for you.
You have a really good thing to talk about. Maybe you do it the old-fashioned way, just send out a postcard.
I just said that. I just said I talked to Larry about that.
I think
Right.
one of the things we can do is, for example, you're in the association, other people are in the Golden Rail, people are in the Veterans Administration. So what we can do is we can just get the essence of what you were saying, and all we need is an name, address, and email. If you get that to us, we'll do it, right? So I mean, that's one of the.
I've got a way to do that.
What's that?
I've got a way to get it out to 170 business owners in this area.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Use you. We're saying leverage. So rather than, like, for example, charge Steve with getting it out to the.
You know what I'll do? I'll give a little thought to in my yeah, and what I would say in my former world, I had a community leaders list, and so I would have 20, 30 people on that group, and so I knew that when I was closing school, they didn't care, right? So I didn't click them as I'm closing schools. They weren't interested in that, but there were other opportunities where I can set it up that way. So if and then you could push it out. So if I have and I can set that group up via our system. So let me think through how to
We can get you a list. Larry and I can get you a list of all the.
I would love, if you could do that for me, that would be, you'd save me probably a half a day's worth of work. I think that'd be great.
Between the two of us.
And then we can massage that list and expand it to the way we need to extend it. Because look, the more information we're able to get out, the better. So it's not honestly, you know me, Steve. I'm not looking to hide information. I'm not looking to keep people away. I'm not looking to not communicate. But I have certain inherent things that inhibit me to do what you're asking me to do. That's all. Yeah, no, and I'll handle the balls. But if I can figure out a better way to do it, I will. Okay? Yes? Sure they could. Yep, sure they could. We put it on our Facebook site. Right. Well, we'll do better. We'll do better. We promise. We'll do better. Agatha, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I just wanted to make a general comment. I just
Yes.
going to be expiring
Yep.
in 5, 6, 7 years.
Yep, we're paying attention to all of it, very, very carefully.
People who own their homes, who pay
Yeah.
off their homes, are saying to me, I feel like I rent my home,
Yeah,
okay? And this is the sentiment, and I have said this to Ed when my kids were here. So I'm not saying this anything differently, I'm just saying we've really got to have a radar on what's going on, because this community will be devastated.
yep, I hear you. Okay. So thank you all. Any board members or? Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And pardon me? And thank you all for coming. We look forward to continue our conversation.